Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to episode 31 of the Lab Podcast. And today we have a special guest, but before we dive into the conversation, I wanted to announce the winner of the giveaway, the t-shirt, the Lab t-shirt. And to enter, we had people leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, and this was the first, so this was the first person to leave a review. And it is Lil Lady Lee. So if you are Lil Lady Lee, then you have won the giveaway. So DM us on Instagram, email us at thelabfitnessjourney@gmail.com, whatever, to claim your t-shirt. And the review says, this podcast is full of a lot of raw energy and real talk while also remaining informative. I enjoy listening to this podcast on my way to school. So
perfect.
Hey,
thank you.
Awesome. So on that note, how are y'all doing?
I'm doing great. Wait, we didn't introduce Seth.
Oh yeah, sorry Seth. So our special guest,
It's that guy.
There's just this one guy, but he isn't not yet. So Seth Carter is our special guest today, and he's here to talk about his weight loss journey. And he just competed in the transformation division and summer shredding.
Hell yeah.
At Houston, Texas, Alphaland, Alphalete, all that influencer shit. So we will dive into that in a second. But until then, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Another stellar week. Finally a stellar week after terrible weeks of anxiety. So I'm back to normal. So that's felt great, and it is beautiful fall here. Where are you at, Seth? What state do you live in?
Williamsburg, Virginia, where grown-ass adults dress up as pilgrims for money.
That's awesome. So you're having some beautiful fall weather too.
I'm freezing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely been cold. I mean, I love it. It's, the trees are changing color and it's spooky time, and I just got a massive Reaper tattoo on my leg, so I'm fully in
Hell yeah.
the spirit. But yeah, it's I'm sure it's colder where you're at.
Actually, today it got up to 80, so...
That's not cold. It's cold here. It's like 50.
Yeah.
Freezing.
It was all week, but not right now. We're having a weird snap. How are you doing, Cody?
I'm doing good. I think I got your anxiety this week, but
I passed it.
it's 70. Anxiety is contagious. It's 70 degrees here, so it's not freezing, but it is cooler. It's kind of that 70s is perfect weather to me. It's not too cold. It's not too hot. You can
Wear a light jacket?
I was like, please make the miscongeniality. please.
You can wear a light jacket or not. Just a lot of changes in life that I can't talk about yet, but it's exciting and also anxiety provoking. So it's always fun to try to bulk when you're having a lot of anxiety, because you're like, your appetite is just gone because anxiety steals it from you, and then you're like, well, I still got to eat the same amount of food, and then it's just more miserable. But it will pass. So eventually I will be able to talk about things and maybe not be so anxious. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah. How you doing, Seth? How's your week?
So, week after, as of yesterday, a week out from the other direction. Not a week out. A week out. We're doing peak week again. Last weekend was summer shredding, and it definitely feels like whiplash. You go from every single freaking thought you have is about the show and getting ready and giving everything, 100% zeroed in on your goal, to being like, okay, now you're going to get to eat some more. And you don't have to do 2 hours of cardio 6 days a week. And I have felt a drop in mood, which I was not expecting. I mean, I knew that there would be an adjustment period, but going into a long bulk, I'm kind of like, okay, I need to have some shortish term goals mixed in there as well, to not lose sight of the long, keep the long term in mind, but thinking oh man, in 2 years, when I'm on stage again, minimum, it's just, from being okay, you gotta hurry up. You're too fat and you're 10 weeks out, so you better starve to death. But yeah, it was it was pretty rough, but doing all right. Adjusting to a treat meal is interesting. Like I'm like, okay, like covet thy treat meal, and just I don't know. It's trying not to like backslide into old habits because it would be so easy. And I've told Cody many a time like my biggest fear is just putting it all back on or any amount of it really. So I've been a little wigged out by the scale, but we out here trying
Yeah,
not to
like
get fat
post-show
again.
depression is a real thing. Like I thought it was made up bullshit. I'm like, what are you talking about? You get to eat? That cannot be sad. And then it's like, oh shit. And it like
It's
snaps
real.
you out of it. It's real. Like, and it's like hard to explain until you like real. I feel like everything in prep's hard to explain until you do it.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
felt like a monk on a mountaintop for weeks and weeks and weeks of being like, I only need leaf from the
Only
earth.
spinach.
Yeah, it really was only spinach, but it ended up being like just a constant thing that I could rely on, which is why I'm sticking with a meal plan for now because it's just predictability that I enjoy, and I didn't even know I needed that, and just the structure of it. But yeah,
That's yeah. I did the same thing because I was like, because Cody gave me the option of going back to macros or sticking with a meal prep. I'm like, let's just stick with meals because like I don't have to think about it, and I love that.
Yeah.
yes, it's great.
Yeah, sometimes like just decision fatigue can fuck you up on its own. So, like there's always the opportunity of down the road being able to play around with the macros within the meal plan to make it a little bit more interesting. And I know, there's like, oh, meal plans aren't sustainable and stuff like that, but I feel like they have a place and time. And it's also option. It could be up to the person. Some people do well with meal plans. Some people don't. So I think in circumstances like with you, Seth, too, decisions are not your friend.
They sure aren't. I get serious decision fatigue, and I did examine, macro by meal, and like, okay, I could maybe write up some potentials and run them by Cody as substitutions, but it will be good for me to always have that blueprint of like, I don't want to figure it out. Well, I know that meal 3 and 4 combined equal this. I'm just going to eat those as usual and not, overwhelm myself. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Even when I was doing like regular macros, essentially fell into a meal plan because I was just that lazy. I'm like, I don't want to think about this, so I'm gonna eat these same ones because I know it fits.
Yeah, yeah. Also,
That's what I would do too.
Cody kind of alluded to with you, Seth, decisions because back a few months ago, July was hard for me, and I just really screwed up macros. Like I thought I was getting stuff, and I was like, I feel like 400 grams of this, like I'm mixing up raw versus cooked weight in my Fitness Pal. I should have probably figured out, I was like, oh man, I'm not hungry at all. To be like, anyway, so I was overeating for several weeks, and that really screwed me up. But yeah, no, we need to take it slow, trying to get into, some macro adjustment, Meal plan
Yeah.
for me, too dumb, too dumb.
Well, especially for you because I know your biggest fear is like gain. Okay, not okay. So like right now in this period of time, because your biggest fear is like gaining it back,
It is.
or just like gaining a shit ton of weight right away, and it's just a good way to still control the variables. It's like we're not quite off prep yet, kind of. It's still
Yep.
the tail end. We gotta work you back up to higher calories. It's not instantaneous. I think that's probably the hard part when you do come out of prep. Yeah, you have more wiggle room. You could eat a bit more, but it's still important to like come out of it properly so you're not just putting on all this fucking fat and like,
Yeah, your body's like,
That's
oh,
what I did. That's what I did because I was like, let me just eat everything. Actually, I gained so much weight so fast, and I'm like, fuck a rebound. Let's just dive. And yeah, it was terrible.
Kel,
was
you're
it?
like cannonball.
I was terrible at it.
And your
And
show was in
then
October.
Yeah, exactly.
the
And
holidays.
all the good food is then. And yeah, so I was a mess. So when I posted that picture of like a side by side of my progress from February to now, yesterday, and it was like vastly different. And I think half the reason is because I was still rebounding from my massive fuck up from my rebound. So I still had so much fat on me from that situation. It was a mess, but I'm back
Well,
to normal.
also,
Well, you
your
look great.
face looks so different. Like your face is just like swollen.
It was so wide, and I had a lot more hair, so like it was like super rounded. And I'm like, okay. Maddie even pointed that out. She's like, "Why did your face look like that?" I'm like, I was like eating like an asshole. Do you not remember?
That's amazing. Why does your face look like that?
They never tell you during because they never noticed during. That was something with
Nope.
Yeah.
with my wife. She was like, because back when I was chonk, everyone in my life, like close to me, except for like real ones, I guess, like my dad or something, would be like, maybe eat a little less. But like, my wife, my friends were like, you're not fat, you're not fat. And then now they look back at pictures like, oh, you were fat. I'm like, yeah, no, I knew. You guys were just like, man. But anyway, it's weird in retrospect looking back and being like, oh, and I thought I was, at certain points like not, but totally was. Anyway, yeah.
We all have those times. I mean, I had some photos pop up from a year ago, and my face was pretty much like, it was pretty fat too. I wasn't like binging on post-show stuff. It was just a photo that was unnecessarily pushing my food. So there's that.
Yeah, you're eating so much.
But, dude, it was stupid. I was like dying, and he kept pushing, and it was literally like looking back at the photos. I'm like, there was no reason to be fucking pushing my food. I had plenty of extra, okay, plenty. So let's not go back there.
Oh my god. So,
yeah, so
what was your favorite part, Seth, of prep?
Ooh, well, I turned a corner, as I was talking about earlier, like July was bad, and then Cody was like, well, I told him, Cody, I don't think I can keep doing macros, I think I need to do the meal plan again, because I had done the meal plan for like 10 days, and then I was a little bitch, I was like, Cody, I can't do it, I need to be able to eat fruit, and I backed out, and then it created like I think it was about 4 weeks or so, 4.5 weeks of me doing dumb things, and I was looking at the scale and I'm like, man, I have just been like plus or minus 1 to 3 pounds for weeks, and I hadn't gained, but I was staying, like maintaining, not the goal, right? So I texted Cody and I was like, I think I need to be on the meal plan again. He's like, yeah, not only that, but you are way behind, my friend. And I was like, oh no, and I was sitting in my car in the Target parking lot crying because I was like, "Oh man, I'm not gonna look good on stage. Like I should just back out." But I sucked up and did A-class bikini girl diet for about 12 weeks, and it was absolutely brutal. But I'm so fucking proud of myself. I didn't touch a damn thing off the plan that entire time. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "You really haven't cheated one time?" And I have a history of using food as an emotional crutch and. Like a lot of us, and it was just so weird readjusting like my coping skills to not be like, ooh, you know what I really need is some Reese's peanut butter cups, and be like, hey, I think you're fine, I think you probably just need to like go for a walk, I think you're stressed out, stuff like that. So that was probably my favorite part. Like a week before, like leading at like peak week was so exciting, even though I really didn't have much change. It was just knowing that I was a week out and really treating every workout like it was the most important workout, even though I was running on nothing and 2 hours of stairs.
Yep.
And that's my own fault.
Seth, honestly, I think you are probably the client that I've pushed the hardest. But that's kind of because you had a little little fuck up there.
Yeah.
So I was like, sorry, this is on
You were straight
man.
up. You were like, you have to promise me you'll eat exactly what I tell you, and I did, because promises are real serious for me. Like I'm like, okay, I promised, I got to do it, and it's a relief to my wife too, because she was like, because it was kind of disturbing to her, like for me to. I was so focused on food, and like especially the last few weeks, I could not be in the same room as someone eating something like rich in fats or carbs or something. It was just like the smell was almost offensive, and I wanted to snatch it out of their hands. So I just leave, and it was isolating, but it was good. I got in touch with a lot of my demons around food, and that was crazy. But you asked what my favorite part was, and I just described suffering. So I guess that I think the suffering was necessary, and I feel like a tougher person. Like, I know that I can hit that wall of hunger and survive it. And I don't want to sound eating disordery at all to our clients. This is an extreme sport. Did I just say our clients? Our listeners. I did not mean to say clients. I am a client. Anyway, my bad. Anyway, but yeah, it ended up being like an educational experience of understanding that just because I felt like, oh, I'm hungry, a lot of times before prep, like, I didn't even understand my own hunger cues, or if it really was a hunger cue. I don't think I've ever truly felt hungry until prep. I think I saw, I don't remember who posted on Instagram the other day. It was somebody in Open, and they were like, oh, dude, you're not really hungry until you're ready to eat, like, just plain ass protein powder and like just flavorless protein. If you're willing to eat like a bucket of that, like, you're actually hungry. And I was just thinking back to prep, like, yeah, there were so many times where I would have eaten anything, like weird combinations. And then you're like, oh, wow, my body just needs nutrients. So now when I'm like, okay, I'm hungry, are you truly hungry? Would you just eat a pile of plain spinach? If the answer is yes, which it has been a few times, I will just eat that and feel better. But for the most part, you really can start to differentiate between cravings versus real hunger after going through this process, if you have a history of issue around, which I think, honestly, most of the Western world does.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And then how did stepping on stage feel?
So thinking back to prep and how that was, even speaking as like a trans man, and that comes with its own set of challenges. Prep was harder than anything I did in transition. That was the hardest experience of my life. And thinking about, the 3 months I spent busting my ass when it really should have been 4. But anyway, all that time on Bikini Girl diet to stand on stage for, well, at least just me for about 22 seconds, it was. And I don't want to undersell it or sound like I'm exaggerating. It was transformative for me. I feel like I absolutely must experience that feeling again. It was like, I don't even know how to put into words, but it was a turning point for me in my life. Like, the turning point to a lot of people, if you're looking at it from a weight loss perspective, would probably be this time around last year when I decided that I was going to go to the gym every day and I was going to change my life. That, in a way, but that was just the choice. But the doing and, like, looking and turning around on stage and seeing my past self blown up, and just in those few seconds that I was looking at it, just thinking, like, I am never going to live like that again. I appreciate that guy for making the choice to change everything, because holy shit, that was not a way to live. But never going back. And I think general fitness is good, and I think for the majority of people it works, but my personality, I have to have goals. I don't think just maintaining will ever be something that, at least not right now in my life, like, I need to have, like, okay, I'm going to do this extreme sport now, and I'm going to bust my ass for the next couple of years to try to put on mass, because I want to get on stage again and be shredded this time, and bigger. So.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. And how was it then coming off? Like, so you kind of alluded to, like, the kind of the scariness about it all, about the rebound and all that jazz. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what your fears are coming into it, and like what you're excited about next?
Yeah, so leading even the weeks, like, I'd say a month before, I started trying to educate myself on reverse dieting, while understanding that Cody was going to tailor whatever needed to happen, just to try to understand the emotions going into reverse dieting and getting out of prep. I knew it was going to be rough, but I really think that books and the internet can only tell you so much. You really just have to experience things for yourself. And it was within a couple of days, like, especially with, like, water coming back into the and feeling kind of swollen, especially after committing crimes, food-wise, the first day or so. And it's like, you just feel like a freaking sponge. And that was hard. immediately, but what was your question?
So my question was, what are your fears around
Oh,
rebounding,
right.
and how are you kind of using that to fuel your next goals?
Yeah, so my fear prior to weight loss, my number one fear was dying. And this, might sound bad, but like I'm not so much scared of that anymore. I don't see that like in my immediate future, but putting the weight back on it was really up there because not only would it be erasing all the hard work that I've done, but I feel better at this weight. But yeah, it's like I think I'm still sitting in it. Now that I'm really thinking about the question, I think I'm still sitting in that fear, and I'm not, a week out, I'm still not out of the woods. I feel like I need to get through the gauntlet that is the holidays. And you guys talked about it in the last episode. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I need to hear. And keeping it to one day and stuff. But I think the thing that I struggle with is like the social aspect of it. Because, friends having Halloween parties, and I know I need to just eat before and like adjust, but it is harder than you expect, because even though I did that during prep, like you're like, well, I'm on prep, I have a show, everyone gets that. It becomes like more isolating, I think, when you're like, I need to continue with that behavior, just with there's going to be rice there too.
Yeah, and like that is like really hard, because then you'll have because from what I experience, like then people just switch their question. Oh, when's your next show? Oh, when's your next show? And you have to hear it for 2 years, and it's like, God damn it, please stop asking me. Just let me be me. And
Yeah.
but people eventually get used to it and will stop asking, and you get
And
used to
plus,
bringing a giant cooler everywhere, and it just becomes
Yeah.
one of your quirky personality traits. It's fine.
yeah, and it's just like you also got to remember you don't really owe anyone an explanation. You could just be like, "Oh no, thank you." That's it. If they ask you why, it's just kind of like, why? Why do you care so much? But also like, if you are keeping it to one day, you don't have to say no. You get to enjoy it with other people because food is also social, and I understand that. So yeah, there will be some moments where it's gonna have to be like, oh no, thank you. But when it comes to holidays, as long as you are just celebrating the holiday and it's not like a week long of Christmas parties or New Year's parties or Thanksgivings, then it's not going to be a whole lot different. It's not going to be like prep strict where you need to bring your Tupperware to Thanksgiving meal. It's like, nah, just enjoy Thanksgiving. Keep it to one day, eat until you're full, and then move on.
That last part's very important because the gluttony that can ensue, like really easily, just from learned behavior through your family and your friends. Even if I haven't engaged in that behavior in a long time, like it's almost like treating yourself like a recovering addict. At least for me,
Because
like,
it is an addiction. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, you cannot eat. Like yesterday, I texted Carter like, I ate 4 Oreos, and I don't know how I stopped myself. I just was like, I'll just eat a couple because I know how many calories that is, and then I'll stop, and then you'll stop doing it. But what I should have said was none, because that was where it got me. I was like, but what is 2 more? What is 2 more? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's another 140 calories. So. And, maybe that won't matter so much later on when, if I'm ever macro focused and not on a meal plan, or we're not in the reverse diet phase, but just the guilt just overwhelmed me and stuff like that. I know I can't let it like completely overwhelm me, and I need to move on. But that feeling of being out of control is my biggest fear around it, like that urge to binge and be like, I'm just so hungry. But are you really? Because like I think by cookie number 3 I was done, but like my brain's like, nah, we never know when we'll eat again. That'll never happen again. We got to eat the rest of this. And I did stop myself, and I still, again, want to reiterate, I have a history of absolutely demolishing some Oreos. So you might be asking, why were they in the house, Seth? Well, they were. I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but when you're in prep and you kind of have like your fantasy foods, you're like, man, I would really, after show, treat myself a little bit. But then I think I went overboard with the hoarding of the items because, I got that Count Chocula, got the Oreos, got something else. But I hid them away during prep. But now I'm like, maybe these can be part of a treat. I'm thinking they need to be hidden again because I think I'm still a little too food focused. Like maybe later on with some flexibility when my calories are higher and, full disclosure around it instead of it being like, I just got to eat all these right now.
Yeah, and like I said, you just have to remember the food's not going anywhere. It's always gonna be there.
Oreo ain't going out of business.
No, they'll be here. But then
They need
also it was
me.
still progress because if you normally eat a whole sleeve of Oreos and you only ate 4, that's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
It really is.
I appreciate that. It just doesn't feel like it after coming out. And what I was talking to you about before is like it doesn't feel like it when you're coming off prep because before it was like that would have been a huge no. You have to have adjustments made. And I was ready. I'm like, I guess I'm going to lose some food because my dumb ass just ate 300 calories worth of freaking Oreos for no reason at all.
What it reminds me of, like prepping, coming off prep, is like if you're ever at one of those like walking sidewalks, and like you're like speed walking on the walking sidewalk, and then suddenly you get off of it, and you're like, oh, and like it's that struggle until you can learn that you can walk again, and that's kind of what it feels like. At least in my experience,
it's whiplash.
Yeah,
it's very. Yeah, and it's nice that we're talking about this right now because I definitely still feel like I'm in the thick of it and probably will continue to be, and I need to just embrace that that's a part of the transition into off season.
Yeah, and you were like towing the line, or you were more than towing the line. You were on the extreme side of things. So now you're kind of teetering over to find some balance, a little bit, less extreme. So it's like there still requires some discipline and some routine and things, but at the same time, 4 Oreos is not going to be a big deal, and you're not gonna completely ruin your bulk because you ate 4 Oreos. It's not like you're stepping on stage, but that's not permission.
No,
it's just like don't get caught up over it. The guilt, I feel like, is what ends up pushing people into fuck it mode. Because it's just like, oh, I'm already fucking guilty. I'm going to like go ham and then I'm going to forget about it later. But now that I'm already feeling it, I'm going to just keep going. But so you don't have to feel the guilt, the shame. Like this is a different season of your life. So just keep remembering that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And even if you get a little round, you can always reel it back in.
But losing weight is so annoying.
It's so hard.
And it's so
and
weird.
It's not fun to cut when you're on a bulk.
No, a little.
Like, this sucks.
Like you going into your little mini cut. I have a feeling that that's probably going to have to be part of because, I don't know how much you guys prescribe to like the endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, but if there was a morph that I would be, I'd be the fat one. Endo, yeah. I look at something and it's like, so, and that's not, growing up, that's not fair when you got like these super tall friends and they eat whatever and you eat the same thing and you get fat and they're not. Like, man, that's not freaking fair.
You might be surprised. Honestly, though, you might be surprised. A lot of people think that they have like a slower metabolism until they start adding more muscle to their frame. And then they're like, oh, I can actually eat more and not be gaining fat. It just seems to be, growing lean tissue and stuff. So the amount of lean tissue you have really does contribute to like your overall metabolism more than people would expect. So it's like we're working on adding muscle to your frame, so you're going to be able to eat more without being worried that it's just going to go straight to places you don't want it to.
Hell yeah. Yeah, because when you're a big boy, you think that, well, you're like, oh, well, under this layer of fat is just this chiseled C-bum body. It just needs to be let out. And then you lose the weight, and you're like, oh, no. And now I'm starting to get that, like, you're a little man. Feeling like being, especially at Alpha Land, holy shit, I was like, you're just a tiny little man, tiny little hairless man. Especially pre-tan when you're just shaved. And you're like, After the tan, it was fine.
Oh, man. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about your experience with, leading up to the show. Tanning, backstage, the actual competition. Like, were people friendly? Was there, you know, a sense of camaraderie, or were people fucking shitty, you know, like all those things.
Yeah,
Spill the
so
tea.
sure will. Christian Guzman is a listener, so it'll be like, Christian, your show. Well, I'm trying to think of how to say this politely. I won't. No, it was a great experience for me. Like a lot of people suspect, and with a lot of shows, like even amongst the NPC, there is a political aspect to who places, especially at the bigger shows. But I come from, you know, Kel doesn't know this, and I guess the people who are listening don't know this, but my big sister is a bodybuilder, retired bikini girl. And I've been to many a show. I've been to USA's, North Americans. You know, I've been around that as a spectator, eating popcorn and being like, man, these guys are real cool. They got muscles. And being to my dad like, hey, do you think I could ever do that? I'd be like, you probably have to eat less. And he's like, you're not wrong. Because, you know, you look at that and you're like, well, that would be really cool to be big like that. And it takes, like, I think back to me, you know, 5 years ago watching and thinking, oh, that'd be cool, and kind of being, a lot closer to being, you know, a bodybuilder. It's bizarre, kind of. But anyway, so my history comes from, you know, witnessing, bodybuilders being bodybuilders, and having my sister, you know, she's got to go to tan, she's got to go check in. And it was surreal for it to be me. Like going to the tanning spot, and well, that's a whole other thing also. But going in for tanning and being like, man, it's not Jess, it's me this time. Like that was really cool, and it was chaos leading up to the day. I got Cody a backstage pass, which you know, I think he feels bad because he wasn't able to be back there very long. But here's the thing: is my brain fell out of my ass like the moment that I stepped back into like the athletes only section. I just was like, well, one, we were third on for the evening show, so I'm like, okay, well, we got a little bit of time, but it was figure and wellness, or wellness, it doesn't matter the order. I think it was wellness and figure, and I was like, I don't think those classes are very big, but I took my time talking to people or whatever and buying stuff. I bought like 3 giant cookies at and they were gone within a millisecond after the show, pretty much. But yeah, it was like, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, transformation men, it's time for your glaze. I'm like, yeah, but I panicked, and I was treating Cody like a dance mom. I was just throwing my shit at him. I was like, can you hold this? And then later I was like, why did you throw all your shit at him? Because I think I took it back. I was like, I can hold this. But I just was like, I can't touch anything because they're going to glaze me, and just acting like, I don't know, like my hair was on fire if I had any. So, you know, going back, and it just happened very fast. And Cody kept saying, like, man, they were not this organized a couple of years ago when I did it. We were just like, good fucking luck. But they lined us up and everything, and we got tan. I was like, okay, now I got to grab some weights and got to pump up. And by the time Cody left, which he was very helpful, he was like, okay, you need to go over there now. Go outside. And I could see in his eyes, he's like, man, this guy's not with it. And I was just dazed from like, I feel like I'm going to leave something somewhere. And I did. I lost my shoes several times, which I am known for, just in general. If I take my shoes off, I'll never see them again. But anyway, getting the pump up, that was really awesome. The guys in my division are very friendly. Lots of crying, lots of hugging. It was kind of a lot. I remember at one point, like, everyone was like hugging, and I was like, "Ugh, you're sweaty bodies." My hands, because my hands were pretty clean, you know, because they wiped my hands off after tan, and I had been happy with that. I'm like, I can use my phone, and then everyone's hugging me, and I'm like, oh no, I was like just covered in glaze, and but yeah, I actually was so pumped because I had slammed a 3D right before, and backstage I was chugging it. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna need to pee. This is very bad, but it ended up being okay because I think I was dehydrated, which worked out. But I pumped out, like, I think it was between, like, 50 and 75 push-ups, like, in one go. Just, like, really, and when I sat up, I was like, holy shit, I've never done that in my life. It was this moment of, like, that's a win right there. I'm in decent enough shape to do that. And I was jazzed the fuck up, and I walked out on stage in the lights, and I could distinctly hear my little sister's stupid little scream. I was like, ah, yes, there she is. And just could not control my joy, honestly. And when we had, like, the pose off, I immediately was like, these judges going to notice me because I'm a little man. I'm a little hobbit. I'm not going to get buried by these, because there are a lot of guys in my division who were tall, and since we're not separated by height in that division, I hauled ass to center stage and got elbowed so many times, but it was just so fun. It was really humbling to listen to the stories of other guys who, you know, I mean, damn, Cody, how many were in car accidents or, like, almost died and then lost 400 pounds, and, you know, some of them were shredded in addition, and just really impressive turnarounds. And I mean, there were not many dry eyes backstage. Like, it was really emotional. Like, there were a couple of guys who placed really well, and they fell to the floor when they heard their video playing, and just, you could see just like the years spent suffering, and then just that push to get over and fix their own life in a way that is just, I have no words, honestly, for some of those guys. Like, and they were so kind, like, backstage, you know, talking, everyone building each other up. I didn't encounter any mean-spiritedness until I walked out, and the physique guys were like, what the hell division is that? Someone said that. I heard when I was walking out. I'm like, I mean,
Do they know what competition they entered?
I know. I shit you not. I forgot to tell you that, but there was I walked out with another guy, and I hear a physique guy go, what division is that? And I'm like, okay, listen, man. Like,
So
this is transformation, what this whole fucking show's about.
And, like, I mean, granted, I think physique is huge in that show. Like, there are so many physique guys. But yeah, they were the only bad energy. It was just, you know, whoever. And I mean, I think for the most part, though, there was a guy who, after, which, by the way, I didn't play, so no, I don't know if I said that, which is fine. But I walked off, and, you know, everyone came up to me, and we were talking, and this guy comes up, and he's like, oh, you know, you guys are so inspiring. I'm a classic physique guy, you know, from this morning. And he just proceeded to basically tell me that he didn't feel like he belonged there until he saw that we were there, and that made him feel better. And he was like, you guys are so inspiring. And I've heard other people who have competed in this division or, like, you know, like, allude to that, or, like, be like, oh my God, it's so nice, you know, having these guys, like, be like, oh, you're so inspirational. I was insulted, you know? Like, I was like, okay. Because he was like, you guys work way harder than us. I'm like, I think we probably went through similar preps, my guy. Like, I really don't like this whole, like, it feels very, like, it's condescending. So if you're listening and you've done that, like, if it comes from a good place, if you're thinking that I'm going to walk away, or someone like me is going to walk away from that interaction, be like, oh, that really, really buff guy said I was good. Like, I threw the baseball at the game. Or like, you know what I'm talking? It felt like that. I was like, ugh, no, I busted my ass and so did you. Like, don't cheapen your own. Anyway, you can tell that really got stuck in my...
Your crawl?
It did. That was the word I was going to use.
Yeah. Cody's definitely never said that word in his life.
Nope.
You're like, what does that even mean?
I don't even know.
It sounds like how it is.
I'm happy, though, that most people were awesome and only, like, the physique guys were douchebags, which is to be expected.
Oh.
I'm a douchebag, so.
But that's
I'm
fun.
not a men's physique guy by choice, though, so maybe it's just a little different.
I was just joking, Cody.
It's okay. I am actually a douchebag, so fair enough.
But you're fun.
Well, at least you think so. But, so, as far as the experience with, you know, stepping on stage, and would you say that it's like something that everyone should experience at one point in their life? Like, would you suggest other people do it or recommend that, or are you like, nah, I prefer not?
I mean, that's a really good question. I feel that if you enjoy man, it's like yes and no, because what I recommend that people do what I did, like I was 0 to 100 for the most part, like from the beginning of this, like I was like, you're going to go to the gym for an hour every single day and blah, 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 blah. There wasn't like, balance is difficult for me. I'm either going to not do it or I'm going to really do it. So that's something that I need to unlearn. But as far as other people doing it, I think there's a lot of reward into just going through a prep, not just stepping on stage, but it really pushes past imagined boundaries. You think like, and I think we're often told like, oh, and this, again, this doesn't apply to if you're diabetic or something, but like if your blood sugar's low, you don't feel good, or, oh, you need to eat, it's been a couple of hours. Like a lot of times you're fine and you could probably push past that, like in prep. And that, again, goes back to the whole like learning about hunger and what that really means. But I think if someone feels like I am spinning my wheels and I don't know where I'm even wanting to head, I think having a date, like for me, saying, okay, October 15th, my ass is going to be on stage. I've already paid, I'm doing it. That date was extremely helpful as a goal, because I think if you're like, well, this year I'd like to lose X amount of weight, or I want to be healthier, or I want to, and those goals are good. But for me, having this like, you will be so embarrassed if you don't, because you've already bought your plane ticket, so you have to. And it was exciting, to have like a goal and have a process leading up to the goal and having changes, in effect every week because you're, laser focused on something. I think if someone needs that, if they're that type of personality where it's like, I can't just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna do this by this day, but really have a set date that you cannot move. Like an external force is like, okay, this is the day, so you're either gonna do it or you're not. That was helpful, and I do credit Summer Shredding with that, even if I didn't place, and ultimately probably some politics, not just for me, but there were some guys who should have placed and they didn't. But anyway, that's another topic of conversation. I credit that show with my weight loss in a lot of ways, as just being that goal. So to anyone listening who is feeling like they need a goal like that, that show is a great one. As far as like, don't go in there expecting to win, but if your goal is to be like, I need to be, ready for this show by this date, then that very well could be why you lose the weight if you're like me.
And like, even though you didn't place, it's still, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though you still have like this newfound confidence. You still enjoyed yourself and you're like more on fire to improve moving forward. So it's just like, I see that in you. I still think that's like 100% beneficial, maybe even more so than if you had won, because you're just like, you're on fire to do better and improve your physique. And so I'm like, as a coach, I can't really ask for more there.
Well, I appreciate that. I believe that's true, because the moment that because I was talking to this other guy back, and he's like, oh, they already called out 15 videos. And I had this moment of like, well, damn it. And then I walked out, but I was still, the adrenaline was still coursing through, just like the waiting and the going on really fast, and posing and the lights, just the overstimulation almost. And then you walk off, and I was like, I'll show them. So, and not necessarily this show.
Okay.
Not necessarily this show, but in the future, I really would like to, as would really like to do NPC. That's what I'm aiming for. As far as whether or not that's physique or classic is highly dependent on what my legs are looking like and if I'll stop getting tattoos. So, covering the quads. Anyway, yeah, it's... I love this. Going to the Olympia, super excited. Get to go to our Super Bowl.
Yes.
It's going to be so fun. And seeing like the lineup, I'm very excited to see the Open guys. Obviously, Classic is where it's at, but it's just going to be great to actually be in the thick of it. Yeah, it's real. It's the energy is awesome. It made me feel like that longing. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but before transition, when the couple of times I'd met a trans person, I would get this weird feeling, and I couldn't place it. And I guess it was jealousy's like non-toxic cousin. Like I was like, oh, like a longing, like I want that for myself. That was honestly kind of how I felt after being around bodybuilders. Um, yeah, you're like they look like gods, like holy shit, like and just admiring what it takes to get like that, and having my sister compete, like I understand technically what it takes, but after going through a prep myself, it's almost like you did your boot camp and now you get your little "hey, you did it" sticker, and you understand in a way that you wouldn't just by being a spectator. I think that's kind of enriched my enjoyment of watching the sport and following the sport.
I wanted to hear about what you thought about Alpha Land.
Yeah, so and just to give some background, I had recently gone to a very hyped gym in Alexandria, Virginia, when I was on travel for work. It's called DMV Iron. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Terrence works out there, and I definitely saw some guys who were clearly pros. I didn't recognize them, but I was like, oh my, that's a big man. And that was a hellscape. I paid so much for a day pass, and people were stealing plates off of like the presses that I was on, and I couldn't get anything. Like I think there was one day where I just pretty much had to do body weight stuff, and I'm like, I could have done this shit in my hotel room. That made me so mad, especially because it was like a drive to this gym, and I was really excited because it is like they call themselves like number 3 in the country. I don't know who decides that. I don't know if you could just, it's like, when you drive through like a ghost town and they're like, world's best pancakes. And you're like, well, who decided that you have the best pancakes? So it was like that. But anyway, Alpha Land, I went into that being like, okay, if this is at all like DMV, it's going to seem cool on the internet, but you're also going during summer shredding, so you got all these people who normally aren't going to that gym who are there. So if you're a regular, you hate life, I'm sure. I mean, I don't even know what it's like on the regular. I'm sure it's probably typically a fairly crowded gym, especially during peak times. But it was just absolutely, feels like a club, but there's no alcohol. Everyone's just absolutely hyped up on pre-workout, and a lot of people aren't even working out because it's summer shredding. So I imagine if you went like this weekend, it would be a different vibe, but there's also like a restaurant and like outdoor seating, and it just definitely feels like a club and a mall, because there's like stores in the front that sell one thing, because it's all Christian stuff and like Buff Bunny, and the lights and everything's like blacked out. It looks sick. It looks sick as hell. It's got the 3 separate gyms. Only one of them's air conditioned. The other ones are like, holy shit, it's hot. But yeah, I mean, it was really fun getting workouts in with Cody and Des, and seeing random people from the internet recording themselves was very surreal, and we all were making fun of influencers the whole time while we were also recording ourselves. But it was really funny to see people like, oh yep, I'm in so many videos right now, I'm in so many Insta Reels and TikToks or whatever, YouTube videos. There he is in the back, there I am. That was strange. And there was one point where a guy came and took a plate off of we think we're on a shoulder press or something. Yeah. And Cody and I even been talking about oh man, it's so annoying when people do that. And he did it, and we just looked at each other and neither of us said anything to the guy because he was huge and scary. So Cody just went and took another plate off his machine, and Des was like, I can't believe he actually did that. I can't believe he went and grabbed that plate. And I wasn't gonna do it. I was like, oh, this is fine. You got one. It's totally light. Oh yeah, this is great. Thanks, dude. That guy just lightened my load. That was so nice of him. But yeah, he even had his own plates.
It was unnecessary. That's why I went and took it back, because I was just like, you got 25s of. Why the fuck did you just take that literally off our machine that we're using? Yeah. So I just stole back, and was just like, you aren't even using it. What the fuck was that? So. It gets weird when it gets busy. People are just there's no rules. People just throw them out the window, and they're like, free for all. Yeah, it's very much chaotic. So not a fan, but probably not always like that. Hopefully, but
hard to say.
almost $40 for a day pass. So that's awful.
Yeah, so
Ridiculous.
it was cool. We did buy a bunch of different 3Ds to try, and they had like the sour strips, which I did not know are not good for you at all until I saw the nutrition facts. Because I just assumed that we know it was like being sold there, like, oh, it must be like pre-workout, which I guess you could. I don't know why you would. It's not effective. Like you just like eat some fucking
Yeah,
table
just
salt would be
sugar.
more. Yeah, but I mean, they taste like crack. But anyway, just seeing like like I think it was like for two of them, it's like 100 calories or something. Like the whole package is like 800. And like, oh my god, you could just sit there and anyway.
That's definitely like acute diabetes in a package. So
Yeah, I sure did eat a whole one of them though. The strawberry, yeah, because I didn't know because they gave you a little goodie bag, which they sure as shit better because it cost me $300 to walk around half naked on stage for 20 seconds. So, and I was telling my sister that she's like, "Man, I don't think I even paid that for USA." So Christian's making serious fucking money. You know,
Not
when
shocked.
when I
Not
when
shocked.
I oh sorry.
No, that's
What-
all I was gonna say. Was not shocked.
No, and I respect it. I respect the drip, but like I also felt like, holy shit, dude. Like everything, like the add on, and then they're like, oh, and you get a goodie bag. You're like, man, for what I paid, tisk
but
tisk. And
also they should let you have a pass to the gym if you're competing.
so
Like
they
Yeah.
they made you
do.
also pay for you just
Do you remember
how was
why?
your
Do you remember why?
do you
I mean, I
forget
can.
something?
I me forget something. Yeah. So when I picked you guys up from the airport and we came back, I realized that I'd missed first check-ins, and they don't let you check in outside of that specific window on Thursday. So they're like, if you want to use the facilities, you're gonna have to pay the $40. I didn't have to pay after that because I had checked in for the next workout. Though I think it ended up not mattering because their pass is like a 24-hour pass, so I just used it again. But it definitely felt like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, why you have, they're saying this is like this, it's a huge show this year and all that, and you're going to have only like 2 hours of check-ins today in the back? Like, you're really telling me? And there was no line to get in at certain times. Like, they absolutely could have had just like rolling check-ins. Anyway, I don't get it. I'm sure it's like a different group of people or something.
So outside of that, just so people know, like, so you did this transformation competition. Can you tell us a bit about like your history, like where was your starting point, and what was like that determining where you're just like, I needed to make a change? What was your turning point? Why? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I have always been chubby to some degree. I mean, I was definitely that 5-year-old like, yeah, he'll grow out of it. And I didn't. Clean Your Plate Club kind of became like okay, maybe this isn't the best thing, like that was kind of the joke with my family that, I was pretty, like, I was always done with my dinner before everyone else. I always acted like someone was going to take it away from me. And that was fine when I was in sports and I was active. Like, for the most part, I was like chonky a little, but active. So no one really bugged me about it. But then, like later in high school, I think I had like half days because I was one of those kids who had taken like a bunch of extra classes early on. So I basically went to school for like 4 hours a day. And that, unfortunately, was very bad for me because I would go home and just eat. I'd be like, it's 11:45. I'm going to go home and slam whatever I feel like slamming, and just not thinking about it because I wasn't thinking at that time in my life, like, you are not running anymore. You're not playing basketball. You're not playing volleyball. You're not doing any of these things. You can't eat like this. Like, you could get away with it before because, you were a little chubby, but you were working out so much, and, I was in, like, marching band and stuff like that. And they do make you walk around some with that. Anyway, but, yeah, got into college, and just the weight kept piling on. Before I knew it, I was over 235 pounds. I think at my actual heaviest, I was closer to 250, but I couldn't verify that anywhere. So I just say 235 was my highest weight. And I hung out there for a while, hit up Cody. I remember back in, like, I want to say prior to top surgery, like early 2019, and being like, hey, I'm interested in like a nutrition plan. Lost like 20 pounds, and then just something, typically when people aren't really ready to lose the weight, they'll come up with any excuse. And for me, it wasn't too different from those stories. I just was like, this is on some level I gave up, right? So I put the weight right back on and then some, and then I think I tried again, I want to say like directly after, just on my own, and then that didn't, I couldn't do it on my own. And then I just was kind of just pretended it was fine. And just like people expect instant results from a diet after a few days, I would just tell myself like, oh, it's just one cheeseburger. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's not like I'm going to die tomorrow from this cheeseburger. But that constant, bad choice, wrong choice, even though, people talk about food neutrality, it wasn't neutral for me. I was consistently making like high calorie choices that were not nutritious. Typical, highly palatable Western diet food. There were times where I could feel like my hands were like tingly and swollen, from just the amount of salt and sugar that I was constantly ingesting. There was a particularly dark moment that you think it would have been a wake-up call where my wife was on travel and I was home by myself, and we were back in our old town, and I was not feeling great. I was hating how my job was going at the time, and I had gone to Carl's Jr., which for your East Coast people, Hardee's, it's the same thing. Anyway, so I had gotten my typical, 2 or 3 times a week, I would go and get their Superstar, which if you're not familiar with the Superstar, it is a big bitch sandwich. They got 2 patties and lots of other stuff. It is a giant fucking thing. I'll never eat that thing again. There's no reason to ever eat one. They're not even that good. So I get that and get like a big fry, and their cookies are like, you can get 3 cookies for $1. That and a giant Fanta, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go feel better now after my shitty day at work. And I got out of the car, and they had loaded up that bag so full of all that stuff that should have been in 2, and it just ripped out and dumped into my driveway. And I just remember being like, man, that should have been like, all this food for one person was enough to rip this large bag and just soak it completely with grease, that it has fallen to your feet. That should have been a wake-up call. It wasn't. I got back in the car and went back to Carl's Jr. and was like, I'm going to order it again, and I still ate it. But when I think back on that moment, like, that so easily could have been my moment. But what I needed to actually give a shit about my life and my health was to get good and scared. So last year, I, without getting gross, because, it's not that kind of podcast, basically I had some bleeding from places that shouldn't be bleeding. And like the dark kind, like internal stuff, right? So that was scary, and my doctor was concerned, and there were, a myriad of things that it could have been. And I had some other symptoms that were also concerning. They ended up finding, some polyps in my stomach and like precancerous stuff, basically. And I spent like a good, leading up to my colonoscopy and endoscopy in January of this year, which is insane to think that that was this year, where I was terrified that I was going to be told that I had cancer, especially because those types of cancers run in my family, despite my young age. So I didn't sleep. I barely ate for about a month leading up to, and before then, I ended up losing like 20 pounds just from that, and I had started medication, and that had killed my appetite. So I was just terrified all the time. But around this time last year, I was like, you can't keep living like this, because, I had out of control health anxiety. All kinds of stuff would set me off. I constantly thought I was sick. And now that I was actually getting validation for that fear, I was having a doctor be like, this isn't great. We need to put you under and put some tubes in you and find out what's in there. It was horrifying. People with hypochondria type, hypochondriac tendencies. That's like your worst fear is actually being validated. You're like, no, I'm crazy. Tell me I'm crazy, doctor. No, this time I think you got something, buddy. So anyway, that was kind of the moment that I said that I was tired of being scared all the time, and I took my life back. So beyond, and I don't even want to say back, because I was never like this. I'm the healthiest I've ever been right now. In my entire life, and even going back to like childhood when I was, I wasn't making like great choices, but I was still exercising. Now I'm eating right and exercising. I've never been able to keep those things going for so long, and I think that's where a lot of my fear comes from now with the reverse diet. Is it would be, I can see myself this is harder than prep in some ways mentally, because it would be so easy going into this emotional time of year where emotional eating is celebrated, and I love holiday food, and this is typically a time of year where I put on weight like a lot of people, and yeah, I'm not going back to how I was. I refuse. Just thinking back to that, just being terrified all the time of getting sick. So I've said it on Cody's podcast. I'll say it here. Like, don't wait until you're scared. It sucks. There's no reason to wait that long. Like, have a cautionary tale be someone else, because once it's you, it could have been way worse for me, and maybe it would have been too late. Like, honestly, in some ways, I think I'm lucky that it wasn't too late, that I wasn't already incredibly sick, because I had, high blood pressure. I was, pre-diabetic. I had all these health concerns that are now gone because of the choices that I've made since. So those everyday choices that before, when those choices were, I'll just have this cheeseburger, it's not going to kill me today, I'm just consistently making a better choice at the very least. And those little choices, granted, it got real intense recently where it was like no mistakes to be made, but even leading up, like I had lost like a good amount of weight, just really concentrating on the day-to-day and trying to nail what was expected of me from Cody has changed my life.
That's really awesome, man.
Thanks, dude.
Shit.
Well,
I'm
I
proud
guess,
of you.
yeah,
Thanks.
I mean, I think that's a good place to wrap it up, because, I don't know.
That's a mic drop moment, I think.
Yeah, don't wait till you're scared, folks.
No
Wait.
spooky here, only Halloween spooky.
Kel, do you have the power talk?
Yeah, I do.
Sweet.
Let me pull it up. So this is kind of funny because, so I don't know who this person is, but it's Ray Goforth. And the quote is, "There are two types of people who would tell you that you cannot make a difference in this world. And those two are those who are afraid to try, and those who are afraid you'll succeed." I know I screwed that up, so I'm going to read it one more time. There are two types of people that will tell you cannot make a difference. Those who are afraid to try, and those who are afraid that you will succeed. And I think it's funny that it's about fear, because I think that's what people are worried about, right? And I know I've had those concerns, like when your friends just don't understand like what you want to do, and like we kind of talked about it a little earlier, like people who ask you, well, why the hell aren't you drinking, or why the hell can't you eat this stuff? And it's just like, a lot of that has to do with them and not you. And because I hear this all the time, like, what am I supposed to do? I can't not drink. Like, I used to drink all the time. And it's like, I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing that anymore. You don't want to do that. Why are you doing it? And they're like, well, my friends, they're going to ask me what's up. And I'm like, yeah, but that's just because they're afraid that you're going to judge them, right? It's all about what's in their head. It's not about you. And so I think when you think about it, just do what you want to do, because most people are afraid they're too chicken shit to do it, or they're afraid that you're gonna do it and you're gonna be happier, and they should have been doing it all along, right? And I know it's not I'm not the most clear and concise person, but I think it's just a really good lesson to learn that it doesn't matter what people think, and you should just do you, and don't be afraid about it.
Yes, I dig it.
Brought to you by social anxiety.
Yes, and well, I was thinking too, people don't seem to be able to wrap their mind around like choosing to do something. Like it's like they just feel sorry for you. Like they feel like you are doing this because you have to, or it's like, oh, I can't eat this. It's not that you can't. It's like you are choosing not to. Like, these are choices. We all have them. It's okay. And people don't understand it. They don't have to. Maybe one day they will. But yeah, just remind yourself it is a choice. And
It's a choice.
Yeah. So.
And don't be afraid to make it.
Yes.
True.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Seth, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on to ramble.
It was good. It was good. All right. And until next time, friends.
Peace out.
Later.
Bye.